The person trying to break you may be losing the moment you stop showing the damage. The strongest response to an attack is often the response that never arrives. What looks like restraint from the outside can be control from within. Here's the truth underneath it. Many provocations are designed less to hurt you than to extract a reaction from you. It isn't the insult that gives another person power. It's the information your anger, panic, or defensiveness reveals about where you can be moved. The attack is only the bait. Your reaction is the prize. Machiavelli understood that pressure exposes the structure beneath appearances, and that the person who remains difficult to read keeps an advantage when others are trying to force a mistake. By the end, you will recognize the stages of provocation before they pull you into them. Slow your response without pretending you feel nothing, and protect the private places another person is trying to enter. You will learn how to let an accusation pass without handing over your center, and how to make calm unavailable for purchase. Before we go further, write this in the comments: my calm stays mine. This isn't for the algorithm. It is a reminder that your composure belongs to you, even when someone is working deliberately to take it. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Recognize the provocation before you answer it. A deliberate attack rarely begins with its real objective. It may arrive as a careless remark, a false accusation, a public correction, or a question designed to make you defend yourself before you have understood what is happening. The surface message is only the visible layer. Beneath it, another person may be testing your speed, your pride, your fear, or your need to be seen as reasonable. Why does this work so often? Because the mind treats social threat like an emergency. It wants to correct the record immediately, restore dignity immediately, and punish the person who created the discomfort immediately. But urgency can be manufactured. The person applying pressure does not always need to prove anything. They only need to make you feel that you must respond now. It isn't every sharp word that deserves your attention. It is the pattern behind the word. Watch how the interaction changes when you do not answer at once. Does the person repeat the accusation more loudly? Do they add an audience? Do they suddenly question your character instead of addressing the matter? Pay attention to whether they are seeking clarity or simply trying to force movement. A useful distinction is this: information gives you room to think, while provocation tries to remove that room. Information can survive a measured response. Provocation often demands speed because delay allows you to see its weak points. If the claim is genuine, it can usually be stated clearly, examined, and revisited. If the pressure depends on confusion, your pause begins to expose the dependence. Notice the small signals, the loaded question that contains its own verdict, the false choice that leaves no dignified answer, the sudden demand that you respond in front of everyone, the subject that changes whenever you address the original point. None of these proves intent by itself, but together they reveal a structure. You are no longer dealing only with words. You are dealing with an attempt to control the conditions under which you interpret the words. Machiavelli's insight was that appearances often conceal the real contest. The visible argument may be about a sentence, but the deeper contest is over who gets to set the pace and define the meaning of the moment. Most people respond to the content before they inspect the intention. The few who remain composed notice both. And once you see the mechanism, the bait loses some of its shine. You do not have to accept the tempo another person places in front of you. The first victory is not a perfect reply. It is recognizing that a reply is being demanded for a reason. Number 2, create a delay between the feeling and the reply. Composure does not mean that the attack leaves no mark. It means the mark does not become an order. Your body may tighten, your face may heat, and your thoughts may rush toward an answer. That reaction is information about your nervous system, not a command from reality. The first impulse is usually protective. It wants to explain, justify, deny, or strike back. This is why a short pause can feel unnatural. The mind interprets silence as surrender when it is actually a recovery of choice. One breath can prevent a sentence that would have revealed too much. 10 seconds can separate a useful response from an emotional confession. Try this when the pressure rises. Let your feet settle, loosen your jaw, and take one slower breath than the moment seems to permit. Do not perform calm for the other person. Use the pause to ask yourself, what exactly is being requested here? Is a response necessary, or is a reaction being harvested? What would remain true if no one in the room received an explanation? The delay does not have to look dramatic. You can take a sip of water, read the message again, ask for the specific concern, or say that the matter will be answered after consideration. You can allow the first sentence to form and then refuse to release it. You can notice the urge to win the exchange and choose instead to preserve the ability to judge it. It isn't suppression. It is sequencing. You are allowing the body to settle before the mind chooses a direction. You stop the instant reply. You stop the defensive essay. You stop treating discomfort as proof that immediate action is required. A person who wants to break you often depends on your first version of the answer because the first version carries heat, fear, and unedited assumptions. Let that version remain private. The calm response is not the one that contains the most emotion. It is the one that still belongs to you after the emotion has passed. Ask what the urgency is protecting. Is the situation truly becoming worse by waiting, or is someone becoming less able to steer you? If a decision is important, it deserves more than the sentence produced at the peak of agitation. If a boundary is necessary, it will still be necessary after one breath. The pause does not erase strength. It prevents strength from being confused with speed. Number 3. Refuse the demand to prove yourself to a hostile audience. Provocation becomes stronger when it convinces you that your worth is on trial. A person makes an accusation, and suddenly you are explaining your history, your intentions, your loyalty, and every detail that might restore your image. But the more you offer under pressure, the more material becomes available for distortion. This is a psychological trap because being misunderstood feels intolerable. The mind wants a clean verdict. It wants the other person and everyone watching to admit that you are right. Yet someone committed to breaking your composure may not be searching for truth. They may be searching for a display of effort. Your frantic defense becomes evidence that the accusation reached you. Machiavelli warned, in essence, that a ruler should not surrender authority by allowing every rumor to dictate a public performance. The same principle protects you. Not every claim deserves a courtroom. Not every critic deserves access to your private reasoning. Watch the moment you begin explaining facts the other person has already heard. Notice when the conversation shifts from what happened to what kind of person you are. You can answer the specific issue once in plain language and then stop. That is not accurate. The decision stands. If there is a concrete concern, state it clearly. These sentences do not beg for approval, and they do not invite a longer fight. A hostile audience changes the purpose of explanation. You are no longer exchanging information. You are performing innocence for people who may have already chosen a side. That performance can become endless because every answer creates another opening. One detail is challenged, then the motive behind it, then the character that supposedly produced the motive. The subject keeps moving, but the demand remains the same. Keep proving that you deserve to be treated fairly. You can decline that arrangement without becoming evasive. State the relevant fact. Correct the falsehood that affects a real decision. Then return responsibility to the person making the claim. What specific evidence supports it? What outcome is actually being requested? If there is no answer beyond more suspicion, the exchange is not clarification. It is a test of how much access you will surrender. It isn't your responsibility to make a dishonest person satisfied with your innocence. It is your responsibility to keep your judgment from being rented by their accusation. Most people defend themselves until they are exhausted. A steadier person knows that endless explanation can become a form of surrender. Number 4. Control what your face, voice, and timing reveal. Another person cannot easily steer what they cannot accurately read. This does not mean becoming expressionless or artificial. It means noticing that visible agitation gives a hostile observer a map of your buttons. The raised voice, the rushed sentence, the sudden smile, the repeated denial, each can show where the pressure is landing. Why is this important? Because provocation is often adjusted in real time. If an insult produces anger, the insult becomes sharper. If silence produces anxiety, the silence becomes longer. If a particular subject produces shame, that subject returns disguised as concern. The attacker is not always following a fixed script. They are watching for results. Pay attention to your pace. Speak slightly more slowly than the person trying to hurry you. Keep your answer narrower than the accusation. Let your eyes remain steady without turning the exchange into a contest. If you need a moment, take it without apologizing for needing one. I will respond when I have considered that. That tone is not useful. This conversation can continue when it is specific. Your body can become a source of information before it becomes a public announcement. Notice the clenched hands, the shallow breath, the urge to fill every silence, the impulse to look toward the audience for rescue. None of these reactions makes you weak. They simply show where the pressure is entering. Once noticed, they no longer have to dictate your presentation. What would happen if you stopped giving an emotional report every time you felt an emotional movement? What if discomfort could exist without appearing on demand? You would still feel the pressure, but the other person would have less access to its controls. It isn't coldness. It is privacy. Not every feeling needs to become public evidence. The person who understands this does not become less human. They become less available for careless handling. A calm voice does not guarantee victory, but it prevents your opponent from using your own nervous system as a steering wheel. Do not confuse control with theatrical stillness. A forced stare, a deliberately delayed smirk, or a display of indifference can become another kind of reaction, one that announces how hard the moment is being managed. The aim is not to make the other person wonder whether you are pretending. The aim is to keep enough room inside yourself to choose words that do not create a second problem. Number 5. Separate the message from the method. Sometimes the person provoking you has identified a real issue but chosen a destructive way to raise it. Other times the accusation is empty and the aggression is meant to disguise that emptiness. If you treat every harsh delivery as proof that the content is false, you may miss something useful. If you treat every confident accusation as proof that the content is false, you may miss something useful. If you treat every confident as quant is sarode, the mind dislikes this separation because it wants a simple conclusion. Either the other person is completely wrong or you are completely wrong. Pressure thrives in that confusion. A hostile tone can make you reject valid information, while a plausible point can make you tolerate abusive treatment. Ask 2 different questions. Is there anything here that requires correction? And is this person communicating in a way that deserves continued access to you? Those questions can produce different answers. You may accept a fact without accepting the humiliation attached to it. You may revise a decision without submitting to the person's attempt to dominate the exchange. A Machiavellian reading of pressure would tell you to study conduct, not just declarations. Anyone can claim concern. The method reveals whether the concern is meant to solve a problem or establish control. Watch how the person behaves after you acknowledge a legitimate point. If they calm down and move toward resolution, there may be a conversation worth having. If they ignore your acknowledgement and escalate anyway, the issue may never have been the issue. It may have been your submission. Use a 2-column judgment in your mind. In one column, place the concrete information, the missed detail, the broken agreement, the result that needs repair. In the other, place the method, interruption, ridicule, threats, exaggeration, or public shaming. The first may deserve action. The second may deserve a boundary. Keeping them separate stops you from accepting a package in which useful information is used to smuggle in disrespect. You can say, "The mistake is real, and the way this is being raised is not acceptable." You can say, "That part needs correction." The personal attack does not. These are not evasions. They are signs that your judgment has not been captured by the emotional packaging. It isn't weakness to correct yourself. It is weakness to let another person decide that correction requires your humiliation. The composed mind can take useful information without swallowing the entire frame offered with it. Number 6. Protect the private places that provocation is trying to enter. An attack becomes more powerful when it moves from a public disagreement into your identity. You made a mistake becomes you always ruin things. That decision was poor becomes you are incapable. The language expands until the whole self is placed inside a single moment. This happens because general accusations are difficult to disprove. A specific claim can be examined. A total judgment can only be fought emotionally. Once you accept the larger frame, you begin searching your entire life for evidence against it, and the other person no longer needs to argue with the present event. Ask yourself, what part of this belongs to the situation, and what part is being added to make me feel permanently defective? Who benefits if one mistake becomes my identity? Why am I treating a person's anger as an objective measurement of my character? Machiavelli understood that control often begins with the story people are persuaded to accept about themselves. If someone can make you adopt their description of you, they do not need to keep attacking. You will continue the attack internally. Watch for the phrases that turn an event into a verdict. Always, never, everyone knows, nobody trusts you, this is who you are. You do not have to argue with each one. Return to the concrete ground. We are discussing this decision, not my entire character. If there is a specific example, name it. I will not continue a conversation built on absolutes. Identity attacks also exploit memory. Once the accusation enters, the mind starts searching backward, collecting every awkward moment as supporting evidence. A single criticism becomes a case file against the self. Interrupt that process by naming the scale of the event. This is one decision. This is one decision. This is one decision. This is one behavior that can be examined and changed. It is not a final ruling on the whole person. You do not have to turn a boundary into a counterattack. There is no need to answer "you always" with another "you always." Refuse the enlarged frame and bring the exchange back to what can be verified. If the other person will not return to specifics, that refusal provides information of its own. The conversation may be seeking submission rather than resolution. It isn't denial to reject an exaggerated identity. It is proportion. You can own a mistake without wearing it as a permanent name. You can hear criticism without giving the critic the authority to define the borders of your mind. Most people carry the attacker's voice long after the conversation ends. The few who protect their inner boundaries examine the message, keep what is useful, and leave the rest where it was spoken. Number 7. Become difficult to move without becoming difficult to reach. This is where composure becomes identity. The aim is not to freeze, withdraw from everyone, or treat every disagreement as warfare. A mind that cannot be touched by anything is not necessarily strong. It may simply be defended against reality. Real strength is more precise. You remain open to facts, but closed to coercion. You can listen without obeying. You can feel anger without handing it the keys. You can leave a conversation without needing the other person to understand why. Why do some people keep trying to provoke you, even after you have answered clearly? Because your reaction has become a source of access. They are accustomed to getting a visible reward, your explanation, your fear, your apology, your collapse, or your attempt to win them back. When the reward disappears, the pattern becomes visible. This does not mean every provocation will stop. Some people escalate when they lose access, and that is why composure must be paired with boundaries. End the call. Leave the room. Document what matters. Seek support when the pressure becomes threatening. Calm is not a requirement to remain near someone who is harming you. Watch what happens inside you when you stop trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. Do you feel the empty space where the struggle used to be? Do you notice how much energy was spent managing another person's interpretation? That energy can return to judgment, work, recovery, and people who do not require you to abandon your dignity to earn basic respect. A boundary is not complete because it was spoken. It becomes real when behavior follows it. If the conversation turns abusive, the conversation ends. If the same accusation returns without evidence, access becomes narrower. If contact creates fear or danger, distance and outside support become more important than appearing composed. A calm mind does not remain available merely to demonstrate endurance. It isn't indifference. It is self-command. You stop chasing the last word. You stop confusing access with intimacy. You stop offering your peace as proof that you are strong enough to endure anything. Machiavelli's deepest lesson here is not to dominate the room. It is to avoid being governed by the room. When your center is no longer available for purchase, pressure can still knock, but it cannot choose what opens. Remember what you saw today. Recognize the provocation before answering it. Create a delay between feeling and reply. Refuse the demand to prove yourself to a hostile audience. Control what your face, voice, and timing reveal. Separate the message from the method. Protect your identity from exaggerated accusations. Become difficult to move without becoming difficult to reach. The goal is not to become cold or suspicious. It is to become clear. This is about recognizing manufactured pressure when it is used on you, not using it on anyone. You are not learning to punish the person who attacked you. You are learning to keep your judgment intact while the attack is happening. You stop offering instant access. You stop accepting another person's urgency as your command. You stop mistaking a reaction for a responsibility. That is how calm becomes more than a mood. It becomes a boundary around your choices, your attention, and your sense of proportion. Remember the words you wrote at the beginning. My calm stays mine. Let them become more than a comment beneath a video. Let them remind you that composure can be felt deeply without being surrendered publicly. And while you are there, the pinned comment holds virtue, the Machiavelli doctrine, a complete system for forging a mind no one can easily read or move, with the iron of self-command and the crown of choosing better people around you. It belongs beside this principle because your inner discipline matters most when you are careful about who receives access to it. If this sharpens something in you, subscribe. The next lesson goes deeper. When the storm reaches for your hands, let it find only still water.